Now, for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in Arise analyst, Dr. Constance Ikwoku. Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Good morning, Yolanda.
Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Good morning, Benga. How are you?
You're looking bright and
Thank you.
sunny.
Thank you. You look bright equally in yellow.
You are the bright and sunny one today, Benga.
Yeah, he is. When I came into the newsroom in the morning, I was like, okay, what's going on? The man in yellow suit. Okay, great to see you guys.
Likewise.
Always a delight.
Yes, all right, let's start today with the paper review. Hello then, welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day newspaper. In this day, Trump says U.S. may deploy airstrikes, ground troops in Nigeria. And going to Anambra State, Amopita says election is my first test. We will deliver a credible exercise. And we're already seeing the fallout of the Trump threat to Nigeria. Stock market loses 246 billion naira. Nigeria's bonds fall over Trump's threat. Analysts allay fears. Vanguard newspaper, Trump, NSA service chiefs meet as U.S. president intensifies threat. Oba Akolu to Lagos government, your demolitions must have human face. Shake up as Navy redeploys 65 rear admirals. 2027 after Ekiti, APC stakeholders, more consensus option. New Telegraph. Chad closes border with Nigeria over possible U.S. military action. Tension at PDP headquarters as faction loyal to Anyanwu takes over secretariat. Additional state for the Southeast will address Nigeria's unfair political structure, according to Senator Ume. And on the window, oil output, OPEC sustains Nigeria's exclusion from increased production. Leadership newspaper, Lagos Chamber of Commerce backs 15% petrol import tax. And Wike speaks as factions throw People's Democratic Party into disarray. All Progressives Congress sweeps council chair seats in Niger State. Steer clear of Anambra poll. Police warn militants, others. And defection, we're proud of you, Tinubu tells Bayelsa Governor Doye Diri. Daily Sun, alleged Christian genocide in Nigeria, how Buhari's refusal of help raised U.S. eyebrows. You'll not regret joining APC, Shatima tells Doye Diri, the Bayelsa governor. Lagos CP declares Showore wanted over planned protest against Oworonshoki demolition. And PDP crisis assumes new twist as NWC faction nominates acting chair. Mohammed takes over as national chairman. Navy redeploys 65 rear admirals in major shakeup. And JAMB uncovers plot by institutions to violate CAP's admission process. The Punch. Governors battle Wike as PDP factions jostle for control. And Tinubu moves to appoint new ambassadors amid U.S. tension. We have a governorship poll. Amopita versus Anambra. Parties sign peace accord. And ANPP bloc set tough terms to back Tinubu's 2027 bid. Moving on to Daily Independent. Decline in oil prices threatens Nigeria's fiscal stability. Experts blame toxic food preservation in Nigeria on poor storage and weak enforcement. Fresh crisis hits PDP as Abdurrahman resumes as acting national chairman. That story on Chad closing its borders also features here. Then coverage deficit strains Nigeria's with 5G phones. We try to save PDP, says Bayelsa governor who has just moved to APC. And report exposes government officials as major perpetrators of attack on journalists. The Guardian finally for local papers. Trump's threat sparks investor fears as economists split on impact. Resident doctors kick as FG claims payment of 31 billion naira arrears. We also have that story on PDP crisis. Let's move to the international headlines, beginning with the Daily Telegraph. BBC's Trump bias exposed in memo leak. Train attack suspect linked to 4 knife crimes in day before rampage. Then we have The Guardian of London. Reeves paves way for tax-raising budget with tough choices talk. Police investigate whether train attack suspect linked to 4 other knife incidents. The Daily Mail. Reeves softens us up for tax betrayal. I'm really clear I'm not coming back with more borrowing or more taxes, says the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Daily Express. Police probe 3 incidents before train attack. And finally, the Times newspaper. Police failed to catch real suspect a day earlier. Okay, let's then return to this day to start our discussion. The lead story there, that's the biggest story affecting Nigeria today, as Trump says US may deploy airstrikes, ground troops in Nigeria. There's service chiefs, NSA declared Nigeria welcomes all support to crush insurgency. Abdullahi Sule refused genocide claims. Obi is also weighing in. ACF calls for judicial panel of inquiry, says Nigeria is not a U.S. colony. There's also that story in the Vanguard newspaper, if you put that up. NSA and service chiefs are meeting or have met as U.S. president intensifies threats. Canada has joined the U.S. in condemning the killing of Christians. So a ton of comments and reactions from Nigeria's designation as a country of particular concern. If we pull up this day again, you know, Trump's guns are blazing threat to invade the country has everybody talking. Chad has closed its borders over security concerns. Reports that terrorists may be planning to flee to that country over these threats. Mr. Peter Obi, the candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 governorship elections, has called this a consequence of incompetence and poor use of Nigeria's resources. The CEO of Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Mrs. Abike Dabiri Arewa, has called for unity of Nigerians at home and abroad. General Abdul Salami Abubakar has also called for Nigerians to unite at this crucial time. The government of Nigeria has expressed openness to receive help from the U.S., but that it should not violate Nigeria's sovereignty. Governor Deleke has, asked Nigeria to seek diplomatic solution to this problem. Afenifere asked Tinubu not to allow foreign military humanitarian intervention. So a lot going on. Yolanda, very fast-moving story that we are looking at.
A very fast-moving story indeed. It's really good to see that the NSA and the service chiefs have sat down to meet and speak more about this and explore more options. I'm glad you spoke as well about the sovereignty of Nigeria, because that is what needs to be prioritized at this point. What Nigeria needs is support in tackling this issue of insecurity and to actually douse this conversation around the Christians versus Muslims, because that is not what the country is facing. I know that people are torn between which side to stand on, as many are saying, yes, perhaps the US should step in and help, but people should remember that there's nothing free in Freetown. We have to be able to protect our borders on our own, and if the United States really wants to assist Nigeria and fight what is currently going on, they can do so in other ways by, offering concrete military support to the Nigerian army.
And Wenga, very quickly, in the interest of time, the National Security Advisor met with service chiefs, and one of the reasons is to make sure that Nigeria is offering, a response that, that is coordinated, and also reviewing the intelligence that we have in order to assess what is ahead of us.
I think Complacency and complicity are very twin concepts, because whatever you do, you'll be ready to take responsibility for it. We've seen the facts and figures, 16,000 deaths of Christians in 7 years. And in 2025 alone, we have over 7,000 deaths, the Muslim. But this should not be a narrative of Christian versus Muslim, but it's really unfortunate that there should be a sense of urgency. And the U.S. has blown this sense of urgency in a proportion that is very, very unpleasant to us, because we all know the implications of having this situation. Sometimes when we call that there should be the right structure and institution to drive this narrative, it's not because we want to spearhead a rhetorics. It's because that's the necessary thing to do, to put in an astute diplomat to drive this narrative, and back home for government to wake up and tackle this menace with every sense of responsibility and urgency. And that is the consequence we are seeing now with the U.S. threatening ground troops and airstrikes on Nigeria. Because the honest truth is that we face an existential threat.
Absolutely.
That's the honest truth.
A lot of people have called for unity. You have Mrs. Abike Dabire-Rewa, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, the Arewa Consultative Forum, and a host of other Nigerians have said it is important for Nigeria at this time to unite. It's also important to expand on that, because unity is not mandated. Unity is a consequence of nation building over time. And we have not seen that in Nigeria. And it is not something that is going to be magical and that will happen over time. We have a government or parties that have spent the last 12 years deliberately marginalizing large portions of its population, oppressing its people, condoning wanton stealing and looting of the country's resources. And this has affected Nigerians in more ways than one. So you have politicians that have continued to divide people along ethnic and religious lines purely for political purposes. And Nigeria has been very divided for the last 12 years, more divided than we can even remember in the country. So if we have not made that conscious, deliberate efforts at nation building that unites the country, that provides a safe space for everybody within the country, and not some Nigerians believing that they are more Nigerians than others, then it's a problem, and that's the consequence of the disunity that we see. Perhaps this is a wake-up call for Nigerians, and perhaps is a brilliant opportunity for the so-called leaders to pivot in the right direction. Nigeria is over 60 years old. In the time frame, it has made progress. It has also retrogressed in so many different aspects. So you have leaders, that are making statements and meaningless statements like Nigeria is non-negotiable. Of course, every country has to negotiate its existence with the people living within it. When you look at history, all over the world, countries negotiate their existence. The United Kingdom, for instance, they negotiated their existence. They have the Scottish, the Northern Irish, the Welsh, the English. You go to other parts of Europe, Germany, they negotiated their existence. Parts of Eastern Europe, the French, the Spanish, which continue to negotiate the problems they have within their country. So Nigeria cannot be different. And that's one of the reasons why Nigeria has been held down. Because Nigeria, even if it is over 60 years old, seems to have refused to grow up and to make the right decisions and to take the necessary steps to restructure or reorganize the country in such a manner that it is a country that is for all Nigerians. Nigeria must be a country that is based on equity, fairness, justice and prosperity for all Nigerians. If Nigeria does not do that, we will continue to go down a path that does not provide prosperity that is needed for all Nigerians, and for a path that will continue to perpetuate the instability that we see today. So what Nigeria does with this opportunity, what the leaders do with this opportunity, what the ruling party does with this opportunity will determine the future for the country. So it's a fast-moving story. It's still unfolding, so we'll continue to bring you more of what is happening, and will continue to stay on top of the story. Let's stay with this day as we go to the second lead story there on INEC and the Anambra election. The INEC chairman, Professor Amopita, is telling us that this is his first test, and is telling Nigerians to believe in him, that he will deliver a credible exercise. We'll also have that story in the Leadership newspaper, where it says, "Stay clear of the Anambra polls, police want militants," and others. So there's a photo of Professor Amopita, INEC chair, with Bishop Matthew Kuka and others after the signing of the peace accord. So 16 candidates signed a peace accord to uphold the integrity of the elections taking place in November of this month. So this peace accord is usually put together by the National Peace Committee, which has often persuaded candidates to commit to it. It's been on since 2015. So 45,000 police officers will be deployed, according to the police. We also have additional over 10,000 officers of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps in Anambra to help with the election. So, Benga, it doesn't seem like these peace accords over time have guaranteed the absence of crisis in elections, have they?
Yeah, it will continue to be a lip service if peace accord does not attract the necessary consequence and penalty. Then that means we're only promoting the culture of impunity. Anambra election is not an election for the lily-livered. I've covered Anambra election before a couple of times, and I know the flashpoint, about 21 local governments in Anambra State and 7 flashpoints, the Agota, the Ihala, and different, about 7 of them, and it's not easy covering election in this area. It's like navigating a landmine, and the INEC really has to be very prepared. 55,000 security agencies and about 14,000 ad hoc workers. Let's see how Amopita will be able to redefine election in a polity that desperately cries for intervention and credible electoral future and integrity in Anambra State. It's just a few days, I think 4 days ahead of that election, and it will be indeed a litmus test for future elections. 2026, we have other governorship elections coming up in the country. So all eyes will be on Anambra State, especially Ihiala. Still reminds me that nightmarish experience of covering that area is still lingers, and I think INEC should be up and doing. There should be support from the security agencies too, to really see that we have a credible poll that will bring in a new sense of leadership, that the people will know that this is truly a reflection of the sanctity of the ballot.
Yeah, I mean, the last elections in that state was relatively peaceful, but talking again about this peace accord, it's a symbolic commitment to non-violence and shared norms. At the same time, if candidates commit to accepting the results, and if the elections are seen as free and fair, then if they commit to accepting the results, then you have a different outcome at the end of the day, and it will generally reduce tensions. So all eyes on Professor Amopita, and I'm sure that Nigerians are wishing him well and to see what he does with these elections in Anambra. Let's move to Daily Independent. In Daily Independent, press crisis hits PDP as Abdulrahman resumes as acting national chair. Abdulrahman Mohammed was previously National Vice Chairman, North Central. He says that he's now acting chair, and that the party will reconcile warring factions and place it back on the path of peace. Meanwhile, the other faction led by Elia Damagu, another acting national chair who has now been displaced, was somewhere else granting a press conference. Recall that an Abuja High Court already stopped the party's national convention scheduled for November 15 and 16. So all this seems like a drama of the absurd, Yolanda. Two people claiming chairmanship. It just underscores a profound leadership crisis that questions the party's constitutional authority.
Yes, absolutely. Benga, do you remember when we were taking the report earlier this morning? We were kind of having a side conversation because we were looking at how the national offices were actually put under lock and key and how much chaos was unfolding yesterday with all of this happening. Everyone was being evacuated from the building. The journalists were being asked to leave. It was such a jarring view to see the armed police taking over the party secretariat. I think some of the images are on the screen right now, and PDP is not having a good time at this moment. Their party really does seem to be falling apart. Benga, I don't know if you want to touch on some of the issues that we have spoken about.
I only wonder how much more does the PDP need? How much more telltale signs does it need to know that it needs to come together to reinvent its will? It started like a child's play, and it's been reminding me of that old nursery game play of Ringa Ringo Roses, a pocket full of posies. I teach you, and we all fall down. And they should know that no one would have any interest, no one would have any benefits to gain from what's currently happening in the PDP. And the lesson and the pointer is that they need to respect the internal democracy. They need to respect the internal equity structure that binds the party. This started from 2023. And now the Wike group have been alleging that they need to respect the South-South zonal leadership structure. And also they have been complaining about leadership. They have been finding fault about the leader of the PDP, Umar Damagu, whose leadership has come under severe threats now with a factional move in the party. And now we can see that it's under lock and key. What more do we have for a party that is having its elective convention on November 15 and 16?
The suspended National Secretary, Mr. Nyangwo, has written INEC officially asking it to recognize his own faction of the National Chairman, Mohammed Abdul Rahman. And we know that these two factions, Anyang was supported by Mr. Nyesom Wike, the FCT minister, and the other faction supported by the governors and Seyi Makinde, particularly of Oyo State, in whose state this convention is supposed to hold. So it's interesting to have Wike and the governor Makinde have fallen out completely. They used to be in the same camp, the G5 camp, during the 2023 elections in the PDP, fighting the same, enemies in quote, but they've completely fallen out, and it's amazing what's going on in that party. So everything that is happening just shows that none of them respect the constitutional authority of their party, and so this underscores and undermines completely the party. We'll be watching more of what's going on in that party. Let's move to Bayelsa State, and in the New Telegraph newspaper, where Shetima Akpabio, APC governors, went to Bayelsa to receive that governor to the ruling party. And in page 2 of New Telegraph, there's a photo of the VP, Kashim Shatima, Senate President Godswill Akpabio, Deputy Senate President Jibrin Barau, Governor Dapo Abiodun, and a host of other dignitaries. And I watched the program live yesterday, and you have to wonder about the fanfare, the heavy ceremonies surrounding such events. It's like, is it necessary? Is this a misplacement of priorities? Is it a wasteful display of power, reward and opportunism, using state resources, to sustain dominance? It looks like it's blurring the lines between governance and partisan celebration. Yolanda, just a lot of performance that goes on into things like this. Is it really necessary?
It's funny you should mention that, Dr. Constance, because those are my thoughts exactly. Just the fanfare, the whole performance of it all. And you know how the President Bola Tinubu had commended Bayelsa State Governor Duye Diri for actually joining, for his decision of joining the APC. So just watching all of this unfold in the report that we did earlier was actually quite shocking. But APC is doing what any leading party would do. This, I guess, is what we'd call early politicking. They're really showing their power, especially in the midst of PDP falling apart. This is exactly what is expected of them at this time.
All right, the international papers, quite a number of stories. I'll run through them now. I'll come back to you. So the G20, Nigeria is hosting the G20 Africa Outreach Meeting. It did that yesterday, and this outreach is on industrialization and effective agriculture. This is ahead of the G20 meeting to be held in South Africa later
in November.
This month. We know that South Africa is hosting the G20 summit this year, and this is the first time an African country is doing that. So discussions are ongoing about what Africa stands to gain on this. But broadly, the G20 summit is vital, not only for Nigeria and South Africa, but for all African countries, because it's a group of 20 powerful nations that have the global GDP of the world. They control 85% of the global GDP and 75% of global trade. So this is important. What Africa does with this, will depend on how they're able to maximize the opportunity. South Africa has defined it, a presidency theme, as solidarity, equality, and sustainability. How far would we go in rebalancing global economic priorities to see what Africa can gain from that? That's a big question. And then moving on to Tanzania, where the President Samia Hassan has been sworn in after those disputed elections. Her major opponents were barred from contesting. So she gained over 90% of the votes to become president. I mean, the tone and shape of her presidency will determine a lot again. Her government may face legitimacy issues, which weakens her leverage. A government that is under legitimacy strain may often resort heavily on security apparatus to curb dissent. So we'll be watching Tanzania. To the Daily Mirror, faces of the heroes of the train horror who saved many lives. 3 people specifically have been praised for their bravery on that fateful day. A train driver, Andre Johnson, made an unscheduled stop at a train station where armed police arrived to catch the suspect, Stephen Krim, age 61. Britain is still shocked from this incident. And finally, to Financial Times, Mamdani leads New York race. This is really exciting for a lot of people. Though the president doesn't like it, Mamdani has been dogged by controversy about his race, religion, and immigrant status. He is ahead in the polls and could become the next mayor of New York at just 34. Fascinating stuff, Yolanda.
Fascinating stuff indeed. I think a lot of those stories are things that we've been speaking about, especially concerning, the G20. That's a very big meeting that's coming up. And the conversation lately has been, will Nigeria still be able to retain its status as, the giant of Africa based on what is currently going on now with the CPC? So I leave that as an open-ended question because we have a lot to look forward to from that. Let's speak a bit about Zoran Mamdani. I like that you mentioned that he's young because that's part of why he's getting so much attention. Yes. And there's also a lot of backlash as well. President Trump is not a big fan of him. He has openly shown his endorsement for Andrew Cuomo. Yes. So I think that Trump is, in his usual ways of, coming out on social media, he has actually called Mamdani incapable and, quote, a communist. So strong opinions for and against him. People are saying that he has won favor in the eyes of the younger demographic because he's partially of their age group, but also you have people talk about the fact that he's a Muslim. And if he does win, he would be the first Muslim mayor of New York. Now, you also have critics as well saying that this man has no resume. He has no experience. What does he bring to the table to be able to hold such a huge position as the mayor of New York? So let's see what this newcomer can do and if he will be able to secure the office if he manages to win. Yeah,
it's obvious the establishment does not like him. At the same time, his opponents are discredited. So he now has only Andrew Cuomo in the race. The other candidate dropped out. So he doesn't have a strong opponent. But we'll see who wins the race at the end of the day. Let's see whether those polls are telling the truth. Those were your headlines for today.